Hi, today we're going to build an AI voiceover generator in Wized. And yeah, let's get right into the demo. So if I click on generate right here, we're going to have this wonderful loading animation. And we're now going to get the AI voiceover any second right here. And let's listen to it together.
Sharky, the toothbrushing shark superhero, patrols the vast ocean, ensuring every sea creature practices good dental hygiene. With his
Wow.
trusty fluoride cape and bristle armor, he fights against the evil plaque pirates who spread cavities and tooth decay. One day, Sharky discovers a hidden coral cave filled with young fish afraid of brushing, and he teaches them the power of a sparkling smile.
Like this. So, well, wonderful story. And yeah, this is all made by AI. And yeah, I'm going to show you how to build this whole generator. So first of all, I just copied this template from my own template. This is based on the AI text generator I built. The only difference is instead of showing text at the end, we're just going to show an audio. And the whole Xano backup setup is one-to-one the same. Instead of calling OpenAI's completion API, we're just going to call their audio API. It is the complete same setup. And instead of storing a text in the Xano database, we're just going to store an audio file. But besides that, it is one-to-one the same process. So I'm not going to go into too many details how to build the whole fixed fail to fetch and the split API calls and the status database, because those videos are already in the video description. I'm just going to show you how to build it and how this whole thing works and how you can build this yourself. So yeah, let's get right started into it. So again, we have this template in here and I will build a clonable for this, and the clonable will be in the video description as well. So we just have those three different states right here. And every state has a Wized attribute because we're going to use the Wized attribute depending on all of those states, those three states here, to set the visibility. A bit like a multi-step form. So think of it like this. If nothing happened yet, we're going to show the visibility of the first item. If I click generate and an API request is loading, I'm going to show the rendering holder based on the Wized attribute. And if everything was successful and I got an API response, I'm looking at the Wized attribute for response holder for the response, and I'm going to set the visibility of this to visible. And this is how this whole thing works. And some things to look into that are different than the other clonable is we have this radio buttons in here. So we're just going to apply on the radio, that's the one with a dot, the Wized attribute of voice actor. We're going to have that in here, and we're going to set the value for both of the radio buttons depending on what voice from OpenAI we want to use. The value I'm using here is actually already the name that OpenAI uses to identify it in the request, so that we don't have to have any logic to translate that. So I'm just going to add one-to-one the names that OpenAI will receive. So this is super simple. And then we just have the button. To submit this, it is just a normal button using a custom component. And I'm just going to add a Wized attribute in here so that we can do an on-click event listener in there. And then here I built a whole custom audio player just for you. And the only thing you need to know about is this is all using some custom JavaScript code. But the only thing you need to know is this component called audio source, because this will contain the audio file and we're going to have display none, so it will be invisible. But using this Wized attribute in here, we're going to set the HTML attribute within Wized of source into this audio element that will then carry the MP3 file. And that will then use this custom components all here arranged into an audio player to play that. So that is how simple that is. And since we don't want to see all of them at once, we're going to add Wized cloak to those two lower items, because they will be only visible after a condition ran, because this is how Wized cloak works. So we want this to be visible initially. We want to hide those. So what Wized Cloak is doing, if it is applied to those items, it is going to hide them on page load unless Wized allows the items to be visible. So that's why we're going to look into Wized Cloak here that will then work on the published site. But I made a whole explanation on that, and all the resources will be linked in the video description as well. So yeah, let's go into Wized and let's get started building this. So again, since this is one-to-one basically how my other template worked, and I'm going to give you the whole project, you can clone it yourself, I'm just going to be a bit more surface level here, and I'm not going to talk hours on all the little details on how to build this yourself. Just because the videos are already in the video description. So yeah, let's go right now into the visibility. So we have the visibility functions that for the holder, for the main holder called the input holder, the one that will be visible initially, we're going to set the visibility if no status is available. So we will set a status in the variable once an API request is completed. So if no API request ever ran, this will be the initial state that will be visible. And here for the icon, we will just show this icon if no current API request is running to send this to OpenAI. Because when it is running, when we're going to send it to OpenAI, we want to show the visibility of the preloader, which when I click on here and it is requesting, which is right now false, but it will be true right now, we'll see right in here after I selected the voice, of course, a loader coming. So this is what it's doing in here. So now we have the loader holder, which is this item right here you're seeing, and we're going to have this visible when it is pending. So you could just do pending. I just did visibility is greater than 0 and it doesn't equal successful, but you could just also do v.generation status equals successful. And then for the last thing, after this is successful, the status right here, we're going to set the visibility of the element that will hold our audio response.
Sharky, the toothbrush.
Sharky. And yeah, this is what's going on in here. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about right now, please watch the videos I linked down in the video description because it is exactly the same structure and I went very in detail, step by step through those, how to work with that. And this will be very helpful so that you can understand the patterns because I just cloned my own template here and modified it. So as you can do that too. You can take this template and build an AI video generator or build an AI avatar product or whatever. So this is also a good advertising for my template here because you can turn it into anything you want. You just need to change the API endpoints. And now let's go into the system. So this is exactly the same logic as we did for the text generator, just working with audio. So when I click on here, right here, so let's put something in here and let's do the alloy. And when I click on here, I'm going to clear all those parameters, including the loop count. And I made a whole video on what the loop count is, how to prevent an endless loop, and it will be also in the video description. So we're going to clear it first, and then we're going to unclick again and prevent default, perform the request of audio request completion. So we're going to send our first API call to Xano that will knock on OpenAI store and say, you know what? I have this audio, please generate this for me. And while OpenAI is loading, we're going to return that and we'll put something in our database with a unique ID saying, this thing is generating. And we're going to return this ID that says, this is pending immediately. And we're going to have this conditional only if a voice actor is selected because we don't want people to generate a voiceover if no voice actor was selected. And now let's go to the second one. So if this request, which is right in here, so this is the one where we're just going to send the script and the voice to our Xano endpoint, and Xano will just send this to OpenAI. And this is one-to-one, exactly the same like we did for the text generator. So you can just watch the video about the text generator and you know how to do that. And we're going to send this to Xano. So how this works in Xano, let's see. We're going to receive the script, the voice. We're going to generate a UUID. We're going to add a record in our AI VoiceOvers table, a pending record. So let's go in here and let's trigger this real quick. Let's be quick and let's update this. So we will see we have an update with our script and a unique ID, but it is set to pending. Because right now in our API endpoint, we have the post process in Xano. So this is running after we returned the API response. We're going to call OpenAI to create an audio generation. And we're going to create out of this result a file resource and then create an audio from the file resource. And if this request was successful, we're going to search this by generation ID, which is right here in the database. We're going to search it by generation ID. Oh, wrong tab. And we're going to then set the status as successful, and we're going to add the audio attachment in the audio attachment right here. And let's save this. And actually, I don't need to do that because I didn't change anything. And now if it wasn't successful, so if else, we're just going to do failed generation in the script and we'll set the status to failed and no file. But now, since this was successful, let's re-update the database and we're going to see we
Sharky,
have
the toothbrushing shark superhero.
We have Sharky in here. So this is how this is going to work. But I made a whole video on that. It's like 15 minutes or something. And you can just go through all the little steps and how this works. But it is really simple. So this is what we're doing in this first part here when this request finishes. And it was successful. Actually, we're going to do this here. This is this part. So now, after we got this ID back, so let's just run this in Xano real quick so you can see we have the script, hello, and we have the voice right here. Oh, we have the voice right here. We're going to run this. Still getting used to Xano's new UI. It's kind of like interesting. So we're going to return this, right? And it's pending. So we're going to return the result that we added in the database right here before the post process ran. And if I'm going to go to the database, we see it was already added.
Hello.
As you can see. So this is the technique we use here. So we get this ID. We want this ID. So once we got this ID and this request gave us the ID, so if this request finished and it was successful, so equals 200, this is the request completion, I'm going to run the function to take this ID I just showed you and set it as a query parameter that we're going to call generation ID. So you can just go to navigation and create a new query parameter in here. I already have one called generation ID. So we're going to use this function right here to set this query parameter. We do a custom function. We do n.parameter.generationID equals r.audio_request_completion.data.generationID. So this is the generation ID I got back from Xano, which will help us identify of which audio we're currently talking about with the backend. So this is what we're doing in here. And then we're going to set the variable as well for the generation status to return pending. So we're going to get in Xano also the status of pending. So we're going to take the status and we're going to say, you know what, the status I received here, I want this status to be the status of our generation status. Of course, it is now saying succeeded because we already got a better status. So let's just redo that real quick. Let's type in hello and let's be quick. So as you can see here, we're going to have generation status pending. And once it is succeeded, we're going to run a similar function to update it to succeeded. but that is how we're going to have that here. And we have this conditional based on if the parameter was set successfully. So we're only going to set the status pending, which is important for our loop, so we want to be careful here, if the parameter was added successfully in the function above. So as you can see, we have a parameter. The parameter is in here. The length of this parameter is surely greater than 0, as you can see right here. Oh, I can do like that. I didn't know that. Oh, I went too far. Yeah, so when we have a parameter in here, of course, we don't have anybody right now because I just exited everything completely. But yeah, if we're going to have the parameter in here, which is true, only under this condition, we're going to set the status that we received from Xano as pending as the status of our Wized variable. So this is how we're going to set the status of pending. And then and now this is where the status gets super important, because now we're going to call the API until we get a response. So this is where the loop comes in. And again, I made a whole video just on loops and how to avoid endless loops. So you want to look into that very carefully if you don't already know the other templates. So we're going to have a custom condition here that if the v.generation status equals pending, and if we have an ID, a generation ID set in our query parameter. If you want to learn more on query parameters, the video will be in the video description, just about query parameters. So if we have a query parameter set and it is greater than 0, which it should be, and the fetch audio response is requesting doesn't equal true, so it's not requesting. The fetch audio response and will just be the request that will be triggered. So this will be the request we're going to start in this action. So we only want to start this action if this request here is that we're going to trigger in this action, it's not already going on. Because you don't want to trigger something to start playing if it is already playing, right? So we added this as a security feature in there to avoid a gazillion API calls going on your Xano backend or whatever you're using. And then we're going to add this in here that if the loop count is under 21, we're going to add loop count in the other actions. So if we have tried over 25 times calling the API and we didn't get a response yet, more than likely it's not going to come after 26. So we're just going to kill this request and we're just going to kill it then, basically, that we're not going to do any more API calls because we're not going to get anything in this scenario. That way we're going to avoid endless loops and millions of API calls happening from one user without the new user knowing that he or she is doing all those API calls. And then we're going to perform the request of fetch audio response. I made a whole video on that, but let's just dive in here real quick. As I already told you, we have the statuses in here, right? So when I'm going to create a voiceover, let's do hello. We're going to use a different voice this time. And I'm very quick right now. Actually, I wasn't quick enough. So let's take something that is a bit longer. So let's take Sharky. Perfect. So we have Sharky, and we're going to go to Xano right here. Oh, no, not Xano. Excuse me. I'm going to go to Wized, and I'm going to put this in here. And let's take another voice this time, and let's run this. Now, if I'm going to go to my Xano table, you're going to see that we have this as pending, right? So we don't know, since Xano doesn't provide live data to us, we don't know once this new MP3 has been added. So what we need to do is and let's take this ID here, we need to create a new API endpoint, which we can call every few seconds, where I'm going to put this ID in that will tell me if it's ready, right? And as you can see, this is ready, and I have my audio file right in here. So we're going to need to build this API endpoint, and there's a whole video just on how to do that. But really quick, we're going to get the records from this table, which will show the status, which right now is successful, and we have the audio in here. And if it is successful, we're going to return the audio. And if it is not successful, we're going to sleep for 10 seconds, so delay the response by 10 seconds, and then fail this request. And when this request is failed, Wized is trained, based on this condition we just talked about here, to retry this request until it is successful or until it failed more than 25 times, and then kill the request. Very important. So, because as long as it is pending and as long as it is not requesting, it is going to retry this. So if I'm going to call this API and it stops requesting and it was not successful, it failed, it is going to retry this again until it is successful. And once it is successful, it's going to stop the request. So this is what we're going to do here. And the easiest way to understand what we're going to do here is actually watching it. So let's put the script, actually that works too. Let's put the UUID in here. You see, we have this request, and now it's calling this request, and it's going to fail now. And since this is going to fail now, after 10 seconds, we're in the sleeper function, it is calling it again, and now it has it already added, so now it's going to return us, this time without the 10-second delay of the sleeper function, our file, which we can play here.
58 FF4F97, 7F604F7E, 864E, 1F88CC18BC.
Wow,
58.
That's quite some number reading. And yeah, this is how we're going to do that. And now we're going to set the success, and this is very important because we want to break out of the loop, because our loop here is dependent on pending. So once this request is successful that we're going to do right now, it's already getting dark behind me. So once this request is successful, we're going, so once it is equal true, this is the fetch when we're going to see, is it already successful in the database? Yes, it is. Okay, perfect. Let's add it here. So once this is successful, we now want to set the variable to the status, in this case, successful. So the status that is in the database for successful. And we're not going to do this manually because there may be some errors. So I just want to make sure that what is reflected in my variables is one-to-one what I have in my database. You could hard code some things based on conditions. That would work perfectly fine. I'm just not a fan of that personally because I like to have it as a best practice approach to reflect the database data. But yeah, we're just going to set it successfully. So now since we have it set as successfully, we're not succeeding the condition down here because it is set to pending. If I were to set this to successful, right here, it will I forgot an S. If I set this to successful, I already tried 25 times. So yeah, this is not going to work that great, but you understand what I tried to say here. When I'm going to when this variable changes, that is dependent on the condition that will retry the API call here, I am going to stop calling the API because the condition is not working anymore, as you can see right here. And we're also keeping track of the loop. I don't know why the loop went to 25. I think I may triggered that while going into the function editor, because as you can see, we only have now 2 times trying to pull this information. So in this case, if I were to go now in here, right here, and I would possibly change this to successful, it it will count up, of course, because now the condition is met and it will now not be successful, as you can see here. So it will do the request because it is successful. But now we want to change it back to pending. As you can see, we just had that at 2 and it just jumped up to 25. So this is like why we have the loop in here, so it doesn't jump higher than 25. And this is why we have pending in here to see we only want to call this when the request is not succeeded yet, or stop calling it after it is failed. And now let's go into the security thing with breaking out of the loop, because we have this counter. So every time this fetch is fetching, so every time this fetch is pulling, trying to get the data, we have a custom condition here that if it is requesting and that equals true, we're going to set the variable of the current count by +1. So we're going to get the current number and we're going to add a +1 on that as well. I have that explained in the video description, how to break out of the loop. So I would highly suggest you, if you don't understand it, to look into that video, because there is a more comprehensive, in-depth approach onto solving this challenge. And now let's go to the last thing, that is the number 6. And that is, if the request fails, we're going to reset the whole process. So if this equals failed, so should we have a failed in this database as a status ever, we are just going to kill everything. We're going to take all our parameters, everything. And it is actually, I have to update that variable. I made a mistake in here, believe it or not. It needs to be fetch audio. So we need to clear fetch audio data. Let's reload this. So we want to do fetch audio data. So we're going to clear both our API requests. So we clear all the content in here. If it failed, we're going to remove our query parameter to an empty string. We set it to an empty string. We're going to reset the count, this max timer, to 0. And we're going to clear the generation status to nothing, like this, if it failed, so that the condition will be set back to the initial state. So let's just add something in here and let's go into the midst of a generation. If we would now to click on here, it would reset everything and force quit the whole process because we had an issue during the API call. And that was it. It was a lot. I started this video with light in the background and now it's all dark. So it is a lot, but it is worth it, and it is a wonderful thing you can build in Wized. And let's go into the utilities. So I made a whole video on that, but we're just essentially, when we have the loader that will load something in here, right here, we have this GIF loader, and we're only going to set this GIF if the current status is pending, and if this request is requesting. So if the audio request completion is requesting, so the moment this is running, or the moment this is fetching continuously, and we have to set pending. Why not have the condition if this is running? Because the fetch will run and stop, and thereby we will have interruptions within the video. So we want to use a variable here that will only be changed if this request fails or succeeds, so that we have the video that will be set as the source continuously. But we don't have it set if those conditions are not met, to have a better experience. I also made a whole video on this called Improve Your User Experience in Wized. It is in the video description as well. And yeah, that was the utilities. And let's now go to the content. So we have the audio source in here. So again, this is the thing I mentioned with the audio source in Webflow. We're just going to go to the AI VoiceOver audio source attribute. We're going to set the HTML attribute of source. And we're just going to put the audio URL that Xano returned us right here in our response in here. And this will create the source.
Pending. Pending.
for our audio that will play in our video player.
Pending.
Right here. And then for the main thing, when I'm going to select this, we have this little funny function that when I select this in here, I have the radio button that will have the voice actor selected. So we're going to now also display the voice actor name in here. So the way we're going to do that is we have a little function that if the voice over actor radio button doesn't equals null, it's going to show me the text select your AI voice. So when I'm going to reload this whole page, it is showing me select your AI voice, right? And because it is null, because it's not set yet. But the moment I'm going to set any voice actor in here, so confirming the else, I'm going to take the input of the current voice actor in here. I'm going to call it voice name, and I'm going to do voice name dot character at 0 to uppercase. So I'm taking the first character, which starts at 0, and I'm going to do it uppercase with this function, and then plus the voice name slice 1. I don't really understand this function myself. ChatGPT helped me a bit with that. I need to do more research on that myself, to be quite honest. But what this is doing, it's taking this value and making the first letter caps, as you can see here. So this was it. It was quite an intense build. To be honest, this was the most intense build I ever made and the longest video I ever made so far. I hope I didn't fry your brain too badly with this video. But if I have, I completely understand that, because this was quite something. Working with audio, working with delayed response is quite something. But I hope that you know that this is possible to build this in Wized. It may not be super easy. It's still easy. It may not be super easy. It is simple, though. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I'm happy to make more videos to explain more details about this project if needed. I'm happy to respond to all your DMs on Discord. I'm just always happy to hear from you, whether it is comments, emails, whatever. So just let me know if you need any help with that, if you have any questions, if you need any more explanational videos about this clonable. And yeah, thank you so much also for all your support. And this clonable will be in the video description as well. You can clone it on Webflow, on Wized, and I may even put the Xano snippet in there. Let's hope I don't expose my API keys. And yeah, thank you so much for all your support. I really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Just thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate that. Bye-bye.